So Dreamy Dream has been around for 20 years now. For the first 15 years, we were an unknown entity, small organization working only in Bangalore, doing deep impact work. In the last 3 to 4 years, suddenly we've been almost been considered like a thought leader in the space of life skills, pioneer in the space of life skills. We've now built government partnerships. So this shift, while we were preparing ourselves for this to happen, as it has happened, it has also pushed us into thinking about how do we now look at the culture of the organization. How do we look at how do we prepare ourselves for this kind of exponential impact that is coming our way? How do we look at ourselves as thought leaders in this space, but yet always having the humility to learn and listen, to always be a learning organization? We also made a very conscious choice that we will be a small organization and constantly look at how we can create large impact. And one of the requirements then of being a small organization is that it has to be a more flat structure, which means we have to unlock more leadership across the organization. And more people now are in external facing roles, having conversations with government officials, with funders, with large partners. So how do we continue to build, I would say, more facilitative and empathy-based leadership across the organization? How do we build agency across the organization to be able to make decisions on their own and choices on their own, as they're being in these spaces where it's crucial for one to take decisions on the spot, and how those decisions are grounded in our values. So internally as an organization, those are some of the questions we are grappling with. Good questions from a good space, but important ones. So when we think about how much of my time as a founder or the leadership's time goes into building culture, building leadership in the organization, we kind of anticipated this about 8-9 years back. So we started building the culture of the organization to be ready for this. So something that grounds the organization today is what we call the people philosophy. And there are 3 values that kind of bring us all together, which is trust, dignity, and accountability, which basically says that every role within the organization and every individual within the organization has dignity, and that needs to be respected. I trust myself to perform my role and achieve my goals, and I trust you to perform your role and achieve your goals. I hold myself to high levels of accountability for my role and goal, and I can also hold you for high levels of accountability. So building that culture has helped us unlock a lot of leadership from across the organization. Just in the last 2 years now, we have almost a 7-member second line leadership. Our attrition rates are under 10%, have been under 10% now for about 9 years, which means there is a lot of leadership that has now stayed with the organization and grown with the organization inside out. So we feel we are, as an organization, now more ready. Sucheta, who took over as the CEO of the organization, is a deeply facilitative leader. And she's just fantastic in being able to recognize people's strengths and help build on those strengths. So she does a lot of the leadership development across the organization because that's her strength. My strength is more around now advocacy, not advocacy of Dreamy Dream, but advocacy of what's important for young people and the role of life skills for young people in education. So I play that role. Sucheta plays the role of holding the organization together, building the next line of leadership. So that's how we've divided ourselves. I think there are definitely more efforts now around leadership development within organizations in the sector. I've seen that happen a lot more now in the last 10 years. There's a recognition among more organizations to invest in leadership. Also, there is recognition and understanding among donors that organizations have to invest in building their capacities. So they are also okay to allocate funds for capacity development and leadership development within organizations. So it's a positive trend. Second, I do see a lot more sectoral level leadership development opportunities. When I became an entrepreneur, there was probably one odd program that probably a Rotary did for leadership development in the sector. But now there are incubators, there are accelerators run by non-profit organizations, run by universities, the ILSS program itself. I wish I had an ILSS program in the early years of my journey. So I think there is a lot more investment, but a lot more can be done. One critical missing link for me is in a lot of these leadership-based programs is either the leadership programs are designed only for the first-line leadership. So there's very little work that's happening with second, third-line leadership. Second, if you see a majority of the people attending these leadership programs seem to be from urban organizations or urban setups. So you're missing out on a core leadership that's coming ground up from the communities. And creating spaces for that leadership to also emerge will be important. I think there have been many good programs in the past around, or continue to exist around, youth leadership development. Prava, for example, has an amazing youth leadership development program. They have a Change Looms program which invests in early stage entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs. Ashoka has the Youth Venture program and the Young Changemaker program now. And there are many others like that. So there has always been traditionally a recognition and an investment in youth leadership. If you look at even a few decades back, within the school system, things like the National Service Scheme, the NSS, the National Cadet Corps, the NCC, youth wings across schools and colleges have all been very active containers for youth leadership development, whether it's in the social side or on the political side. So that has always been there. I think what is interesting now is to also look at what is relevant for the future. What are the big questions we as a society are grappling with? And how do we then prepare youth to bring leadership into those questions? So something like, for example, the climate crisis. I believe my generation actually doesn't know how to respond to the climate crisis. It's actually almost overwhelming us and shocking us into doing nothing. But young people with the right kind of life skills and agency could potentially then be able to respond and adapt to the climate crisis, and possibly also look at solutions with a lot more hope and optimism and skills. So I think investing in youth leadership that is more relevant for our current societal challenges and for the future, that is important. And how do we then transform our programs for that? So within Dream a Dream, our approach is really around, let's just invest in building their life skills, their social emotional competencies, their agency, and they will figure it out. So let's deepen that investment, and how they then adapt and respond to a fast changing, complex future is really up to them. At the sectoral level, there's a long wish list. I think definitely a big buzzword right now in this sector is collaboration. A recognition among many organizations and systems that we alone can't solve the problem. And we need to really play into each other's strengths and find common grounds to be able to work together. So I think the intention is there. There's definitely a push in that direction. Some push coming from funders, some push coming from the sector itself, from other organizations, some thought leaders emerging in the sector who are pushing for this. So collaborative networks, impact networks, coalitions, more of that is happening now. The challenge for me there is that we actually don't know how to collaborate. And I say that with deep humility, because the education system I grew up in only taught me how to compete. It didn't teach me how to collaborate. I was not friends with the person next to me who was competing with me for the first place in school or university. We were competing, so we could never be friends. So now then, expecting me to suddenly be excited about collaborate and know how to collaborate, I need to go through an unlearning process. And that needs to be intentionalized. It won't happen automatically. So just bringing a bunch of us into a room is not going to ensure we collaborate. We have to put ourselves through a process which helps us unlearn competition and learn collaboration. And the key elements of collaboration are respect, trust. Trust not at a superficial level, but trust at a deep level. Can I trust you with my life? Because a key element of collaboration is that I have to let go of something that I have believed in for 20 years. Because now I'm inviting someone else into that purpose, into that shared purpose. I'll only let go if I can truly trust you. So that, for me, a big concern with this whole push towards collaboration is that we are not investing enough in building trust. And we are assuming that just bringing people together in a room would mean collaborations will happen. So that's one piece, I think, sectorally that needs to be pushed. Second is, I think, what is exciting is a lot of young people now, young graduates are coming in and setting up organizations, making a conscious career choice to come into the sector. So there's been a big boost towards young entrepreneurship coming into the sector. However, there seems to be a singular narrative around how they should run and build their organizations, which is around scale. And there seems to be a standard template for scale, which is coming more from the corporate understanding of scale, which is service delivery, scaling a service delivery. You start off working with 500 kids. Now, in 3 years, can you work with 100,000 kids? Can you be in 5 states? I think that's a dangerous trend. I believe that is one way to scale, but not the only way to scale. A key element of coming in to solve a complex problem is to stay with the problem, because the problem has layers. So if you go with an example of, okay, there are high levels of dropout at grade 5 in school, and you say, I'll go and solve that problem. The problem is not that there are dropouts. You have to understand why there are dropouts. So when you understand that, then there's another complexity to the problem. If the dropout is happening because in that particular community, it's a migrant community. So why is migration happening? So then you go into livelihoods, or you go into debt. So there's such layers of complexity in the problem that it takes 3 to 5 years for you to really peel the layers and articulate a problem. That doesn't mean you don't do anything in those 5 years. You obviously experiment and innovate on solutions, but you don't scale those solutions. You stay in that container and create deep impact. Second is, the more you do deep impact work, the better you'll understand your own solution and how well it's working with your target group. But if you do something just for a year and then say, I'm ready to scale, and suddenly take it to 5,000 community members, the quality is going to be bare minimum. It's going to be very average. It's going to be mediocre. So that's the second, for me, challenge in the sector, that there's a standard template for scale and the standard template of how one should grow. It also is going to result in more burnouts. Especially with younger entrepreneurs, they need access to mentors, they need access to people who can give them grounding, not just push them towards go raise more money, scale more, do more. They need to get grounded because it's a very emotional work. You come across a lot of trauma in this work. You come across a lot of failure in this work. There needs to be space to hold that. For me, for people from other sectors coming into the social sector, overall is a very positive trend. What is important is to really reflect on your intention of why you're coming into the sector. If you're looking at this as retirement, then it's not the space for you. If you're looking at this space as something that I think I can easily do, it is not hard work. It won't require me to work 8 hours, 10 hours, sometimes 12 hours a day, like probably something I can do for 4 hours a day. This is not the space for you. Because we're dealing with very complex challenges, because we're dealing with human conditions, it's actually more hard work. It's also more emotional. So being consistently clarifying for yourself, why do you want to come into the sector, is very important, and being very clear on that intention. I also do believe that people are inherently good and they're looking for spaces where they can contribute back to society more now than ever before. And it's good that the sector has now created that ability for people from diverse backgrounds to come in and be able to be part of this change, be part of solving a complex problem. So it's a positive trend. The intentionality, clarifying intentionality is key. The second is the skills are not transferable in the same way. There are definitely skills that are valuable, but they're not just easily transferable. So one has to accept the fact that there is a bit of unlearning required and new learning. Second, context is everything. For example, everyone in the country or everyone in the world has an opinion about how education should happen. Not true. There are people who have been in education, who understand education in a very deep way. I came with that assumption when I came into the sector that I know what to do. It took me 10 years to accept the fact actually I don't know, and there's a lot more I don't know today than I thought I knew before. So coming in with that sense of humility, really investing in building context. The third piece, which we believe is very important, at least in the work that we do with kids and when we bring in new people, have your own story of a child, which means you need to be on the ground. You need to experience our work with children firsthand. You need to be the facilitator, you need to be the trainer, you need to be the camp volunteer, you need to run a life skills session. Because when you do that, then you find your story of the child. And when you have your story of the child, then you can contextualize your understanding of the work from that story, and you can keep unwrapping that story. So building context about the work, coming from a space of listening and humility, building context of the work, will then give you a sense of what are the strengths that I have that I can bring into this context. One challenge I do see when senior people come in at senior leadership positions in high growth organizations at high growth time is that they get sucked into the doing, building partnerships, raising funds, scaling the program, that they don't ground themselves in the purpose. So when if senior people or anyone who joins Stream Train, for example, the first 3 to 6 months, our immersion is around be with the child. It does not matter if you have to delay our growth plans by 6 months, but go be with the child. Build your own story of the child. And then when you go out and build these partnerships, then it's more grounded. So that's important for us.